There's two probably. My first project was on Ghost of Tsushima. That one was definitely pretty cool, pretty interesting for me because I had to go out to Seattle. I had never been to Seattle. And the funny story about that was it was my first job and in the industry. I had done other stuff like architectural visualization, doing renderings for different architecture stuff, and I worked for an artist for a little bit. I did his renderings, but when I went out there, it was my first video game, and it was I think January 2020, so right before the whole COVID thing started. So I'm out there in a city I'd never been before, and you know, at one point Seattle was considered the worst place to be before New York got crazy. So that was definitely an interesting first gig. But honestly, it's just seemed like another challenge just to get to the other side. Um, but that one, I met some cool people, really interesting experience. But I'd say probably Mandalorian the most, the one I'm most maybe proud of as of right now, just because that was a show I've been wanting to work on since I was in school. Um, and I remember when the first season came out, I was kind of doing research on the um, like the dome and everything they would do, and I thought it was super interesting because they used video game software to create it versus just rendering it out. And I was like, well, I know video game stuff. Maybe one day I can do that. And it was pretty cool, and it lined up. Yes, yeah. My focus is on environments. Back in school, they kind of would tell you, do you want to be a character artist, environment artist? You could also do lighting. Um, what's the other one? A texture artist. So just depending on which one you picked, and environment was the one that kept kind of calling to me. Um, and also I had done a lot of like architectural stuff, so that helped a lot kind of transition into that field a lot more seamlessly. It gave me a little bit of an edge because I had had some experience with architecture stuff before. I would say a lot of the time it depends on the person or the place you're working at. Sometimes they'll have like their own software, something that I'm not familiar with. Usually, like they'll have like a proprietary game engine, and they're the only ones that use it. So you can't really, Google like how do I do this? So you have to kind of ask questions, and you have to figure out like, sometimes too many questions can be a little bit you can slow down the process. So you have to use your resources to make sure you're not getting in the way while also learning the software. Um, and early on, I did a lot of contract work, so I jumped around a lot. I was at Sucker Punch for Ghost of Tsushima. I was at Armature with Resident Evil 4 VR. Happy Mushroom for The Mandalorian and another Star Wars TV show that's getting ready to launch, I think, next year. And then at Visual Concepts doing WWE 2K23. So I've had to do a lot of kind of like, um, go run with the punches and just kind of be willing to be adaptable. Because there's always something that comes in your way, so you got to just be willing to leap over it when you can. Um, I'm familiar with Blender. Me personally, I have not. I know it's a really big software. A lot of we had a couple people on one of the big projects we got to work on that use Blender a lot. Honestly, like it's when I was in school, it was kind of like a software where you just kind of like explored 3D, but now it's so advanced that they're using it in the industry. They're doing things that are incredible on there. My main software is Maya, where I do all the modeling. Unreal is usually all the game engine stuff where you put everything in there. There's other softwares like Substance Painter where you do all the texturing. And then what else? There's another one called Substance Designer that's also for texturing. So there's a few different softwares that I use, but Maya is the one I do for modeling. Um, I'd say I'm either seeking growth as far as like moving up in title or certain projects. If there's something that just really calls to me and something like a passion project, um, I've been very lucky because when I was leaving Sucker Punch, and when I was in Seattle, and that contract was up. I was kind of like, it was only a few months out there, so there was no guarantee I was gonna get another gig right off the bat, because you could argue that, oh, it's only a few months, it's not like a year or two. So I kind of applied everywhere, and I kind of looked for a while, and I ended up getting the Resident Evil. I was a big fan of that series growing up. The second one for the PlayStation was the reason why I got into video games in the first place. So that was definitely a big one for me. Um, but I'd say, maybe like a Silent Hill series one day or something. I like a lot of survival horror stuff. Um, I think another thing would be cool is like maybe like an indie game that's like low budget but just blows up, and people care about it. That's another thing I'd be interested in. Yeah, I'd say honestly, like, there's certain studios that have a lot of appeal and certain projects. I think most people back in school, they were big fans of Pixar. I'm also a big fan of Pixar. When we were little, or not little, but when we were younger, we went to visit the Pixar studio. We knew somebody that was out there, and they let us in because there's gates. You can't walk in there. Um, and it was a group of us, and we're walking, and everything we look at, we're like in awe. They had photos of um, different different projects and different movies that we all knew and loved, and then they had the models that the sculptors would model out the characters, and you'd see them there just standing there. It was really cool. And then we're walking out, and we see this group of people coming out of a building, and we glance over there, and it's all the big directors from Pixar coming out. Um, like all the big guys, everyone's just done every like big movie in the past 10 years were there. Uh, and we're like walking in awe because we're still in college, and that was definitely one of those moments that stuck with me. So that's definitely a bucket list at one point or another. But it's a very um, competitive studio that has a lot of they have a lot of options. So you got to really you know apply yourself. Oh, that's awesome.